One by one, the last of the 13 Los Sudes Trinitarios gang members accused of brutally killing 15-year-old Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz.
On a warm June evening in 2018, the Bronx community was shattered by the brutal murder of 15-year-old Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz. Jr., an aspiring police officer and member of the NYPD Explorers program, was mistaken for a rival gang member by the notorious Trinitarios gang. It all began when Jr. left his apartment to lend a friend $5. As he walked through the streets, he was suddenly chased by a group of gang members.
Are walking or running with steely-eyed conviction.
But the gang members followed him inside, dragging him out despite the store owner's attempts to protect him. The footage showed the faces of the attackers and the brutal nature of the assault.
The lethal cut, police say, came from Martinez Estrella, seen pushing Jr. toward the bodega's door.
Outside the shop, the gang members attacked Jr. with knives and a machete. The assault was swift and merciless, leaving Jr. with fatal wounds. Jr. succumbed outside the shop, seeking help.
Jr. had just used his last ounce of strength to run feebly up the block toward St. Barnabas Hospital. And as you can see, the dying teen crossed the...
Power ran off and he died near the security booth. The security person instantly called 911, but it was too late.
...was processed during an initial roundup of suspects that took nearly 3 weeks.
He has what appears to be a machete in his hand.
Now, for the first time...
The police quickly identified and arrested the suspects. 5 key members of the Trinitarios gang were charged with Jr.'s murder: Antonio Rodriguez Hernandez Santiago, Jonaiki Martinez Estrella, Jose Muniz, Manuel Rivera, and Elvin Garcia. They were found guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, conspiracy, and gang assault. In the end, justice was served. The 5 defendants received lengthy prison sentences, with some facing life behind bars.
That case went to the jury on Friday after closing arguments. Vayovis is the 3rd and final defendant to be tried in the 2011 killings of David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell. The 2 other men charged in this case were both convicted of first-degree murder and are serving life sentences in prison.
A Hampton Superior Court jury found 34-year-old Caius Vayovis guilty on 3 counts each of kidnapping, witness intimidation, and first-degree murder. He was sentenced to lifetime imprisonment.
When I was first arrested, the police made it clear to me that they did not actually believe I had anything to do with the disappearance and murder of these men, but that they did believe I possessed some knowledge that would greatly assist in their investigation. The threats and the promises were instantaneous, and it was their expressed intent to put the squeeze on me. I've been in isolation for 3 years now. I've refused to talk to the cops. I've turned down all the numerous plea deals offered me from the beginning. Just 1 month before this trial began, D.A. Capos called my attorney, Gavin Reardon, and told him he knew I did not kill these...
Vayovis of Pittsfield had pleaded not guilty to the charges connected to the murders of David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell. The men disappeared from a Pittsfield apartment in August 2011. Their dismembered bodies were discovered 2 weeks later in Beckett.
And Robert Chadwell. The 33-year-old Vayovis has 2 rows of bumps resembling horns implanted in his forehead, a 666 tattoo between them, and other facial and neck tattoos. After discussing the matter, a Hampton Superior Court judge on Thursday told defense lawyer James Reardon.
Jurors in the Hampton Superior Court trial of Caius Vayovis, accused of the Berkshire triple murder, along with Adam Lee Hall and David Chalou, sat sober-faced as autopsy photos were shown. Judge C. Jeffrey Kinder warned the jurors that the photos might be disturbing and urged them to remain impartial. Dr. Hammers gave a detailed account of the injuries suffered by each victim, describing gunshot wounds, stab wounds, knife cuts, and bruises.
A day after a barrage of bullets at this bus...
In August 2011, just weeks before he was to testify against Hall, Robert Glasser, his roommate Edward Frampton, and their friend Chadwell disappeared from Pittsfield. Their dismembered bodies were found in Beckett 10 days later. According to prosecutors, Hall, 36 of Peru, Chalou, 46 of North Adams, and Vayovis, 32 of Pittsfield, kidnapped the victims from Frampton's home in the early hours of August 28, 2011, and shot them. Both Hall and Chalou were found guilty in separate trials of 3 counts of first-degree murder and are serving life sentences without parole. Dr. Hammers detailed the injuries, starting with Chadwell, who had gunshot wounds to his shoulder, torso, and face.
Guilty to murder, kidnapping, and witness intimidation. His attorney had argued about a month ago that it might be difficult to find impartial jurors in this case due to...
He also had 2 stab wounds on his neck, a blunt force injury to his chin causing multiple fractures in his jaw, and rib fractures. Chadwell's injuries included a significant cut from his pubic region to his rib cage, superficial wounds, and cuts on his arm, wrist, and torso. Frampton had 5 gunshot wounds, 1 in his left cheek, 1 in the back of his left shoulder, and 3 in his arms. He also had 3 stab wounds on his jawline, 1 on his neck, and multiple wounds on his torso, including a deep horizontal cut on his upper back that severed his spinal cord, a wound in his lower back, and 1 in his left thigh. Another wound extended from his pelvic area to the base of his ribs. Glasser had 3 gunshot wounds, 1 through his ear into his head, 1 in his left jaw, and 1 in his thigh. He also had 3 stab wounds on his back and a laceration over his eyebrow. His head had 3 hemorrhages with bleeding under the scalp from blunt injury. His torso was cut apart near the liver, with portions of the liver displaced.
Notorious and feared, George Gewalt Thomas, leader of the 28's gang. His reach and influence stretched wide, from the Cape Flat streets to inside prison. Thomas was convicted on 52 charges, including 7 of murder. His trial...
The man they call violent. George Hewald Thomas, leader of the 28's gang in Cape Town, was found guilty of 7 murders, including the killings of 2 state witnesses, while he was in prison. The leader of the feared 28's gang in Bishop Lavis was sentenced to an effective 175 years in jail in the Western Cape High Court.
Notorious and feared, George Gewalt Thomas, leader of the 28's gang. His reach and influence stretched wide, from the Cape Flat streets to inside prison. Thomas was convicted on 52 charges, including 7 of murder. His trial was one of the biggest and most complex gang prosecutions in the province.
In this particular case, we started some years ago, as you know. Now, the sentencing of George Thomas and his co-accused is proof that our integrated approach of the cluster can and does work.
The court heard that Thomas made and received 33,000 phone calls while in solitary confinement, orchestrating the murder of people who were to testify against him. The matter is still being investigated.
In some instances, it is some of our officials. You must understand that particularly Thomas Gewalt was quite a very feared man. He would not only...
Judge Chantel Fortuin found Thomas guilty of 7 counts of murder, 2 of racketeering, 3 of belonging to a criminal gang, 3 of conspiracy to commit a crime, 10 counts of inciting the commitment of a crime, 3 counts of attempted murder, 1 of housebreaking with the intent to commit robbery, 3 counts of theft, 11 counts of illegally possessing firearms, and 10 of illegally possessing ammunition. Thomas was also involved in theft, extortion, and other gang-related offenses. The trial, which lasted over 5 years, was marked by high security due to the threats against witnesses and prosecutors. Thomas and 18 of his co-accused were initially charged when the case began in the Western Cape High Court 4 years ago. 2 accused, Fred Williams and Jason Stinder, were acquitted of all charges. Williams was murdered shortly after his acquittal. The group initially faced 166 different counts. Thomas, who received the heaviest sentence, was convicted on 53 counts. The court proceedings revealed that Thomas orchestrated many of these crimes from behind bars, demonstrating his influence and control over the gang. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
Rios was found guilty of first-degree murder last Friday for the murder of Kenneth Lopez.
Lee Rios, a member of the Latin Kings gang, was convicted for the murder of 18-year-old Kenneth Lopez in Springfield, Massachusetts. The incident occurred in 2015 when Rios, along with another gang member, Jonathan Guevara, targeted Lopez in a brutal attack. Lopez was shot and killed, and the crime was linked to gang rivalry. Defense lawyer Mary Ann Stamm argued that the prosecution's evidence against Rios relied on evidence from those seeking reduced charges. Rios and Lopez, Both Latin Kings members had a falling out. Lopez was found dead on March 25, 2015. Prosecutors said witnesses heard Rios confess. Judge Mason acknowledged Lopez's troubled past. Rios was also involved in other criminal activities, including robbery and drug offenses. The trial revealed that Rios had a history of gang-related violence, which contributed to his conviction.
First-degree murder sentence carries mandatory sentencing of life in prison without the chance of parole.
The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, which in Massachusetts carries a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
As he prepared to leave a Deerfield Beach motorcycle dealership last June. The cameras show a vehicle block the rapper's exit, and then men jump out of the vehicle and confront XXXTentacion. One of the men goes into his car. Then there's a confrontation and a robbery, and the men shoot and kill the talented young artist.
On a sunny afternoon in June 2018, the world of hip-hop was shaken by the tragic murder of Jose Dwayne Ricardo Onfroy, better known as XXXTentacion.
Day, when at least one of the suspects walked past him. A short time later, the drama unfolded outside. 4 men in all are charged in the murder. One of them, Robert Allen, appeared in court this week asking to...
The 20-year-old rapper, known for his raw and emotional music, was leaving Riva Motorsports in Deerfield Beach, Florida, when his life was abruptly cut short.
It shows Williams fanning $100 bills and surrounded by money. And this video taken at 12:35 a.m. This time Williams appears to be in a car, also fanning $100 bills, smiling and singing.
A dark SUV blocked his exit as XXXTentacion sat in his black BMW i8, preparing to leave the dealership. 2 masked men emerged, brandishing firearms. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation. The assailants demanded his Louis Vuitton bag, which contained $50,000 in cash. Despite the chaos, XXXTentacion remained composed, but the situation quickly escalated.
Deerfield Beach, the rapper XXXTentacion has been shot, apparently targeted while shopping for a motorcycle. Chopper 4 was over the scene on North Dixie Highway near Sample Road. The Broward Sheriff's Office says they got a call about the shooting at around 4 p.m. They say the rapper was transported to an area hospital where the sheriff's office says he died.
In a matter of moments, the confrontation turned deadly. Shots rang out. XXXTentacion was struck multiple times, and the assailants fled the scene with the bag of cash. The rapper was left slumped in his car, bleeding and unresponsive.
Jose Onfroy was leaving a Broward County motorcycle shop yesterday when he was shot by 2 men who ran up to his car. He was rushed to a hospital but did not make it. Onfroy's death comes just weeks.
The Broward County Sheriff's Office worked tirelessly, piecing together the events leading up to the shooting.
Where there was some type of agreement or plan, however you want to refer to it, to rent a vehicle. You recall that?
Within days, the first suspect, Dedrick Williams, was arrested. The surveillance footage identified Williams as a tattoo artist with a criminal record. His arrest marked the beginning of a series of breakthroughs in the case. As the investigation continued, 3 more suspects were identified: Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsom, and Robert Allen. Boatwright, believed to be the shooter, was apprehended shortly after Williams. Newsom, another key player in the robbery, was arrested weeks later. Allen, who played a lesser role in the crime, was also taken into custody. The 4 men faced charges of first-degree murder and armed robbery, with prosecutors seeking the harshest penalties.
2018, after Duran stepped up to pick out a shooting suspect in a lineup, she was lured, kidnapped, shot 10 times, and killed.
3 men have been sentenced in the murder of 28-year-old Simone Duran. Duran's body was found burning near a dumpster in the 700 block of Nile Street in Golden on November 5, 2018. Alonzo Quintana, 28, was sentenced to life in prison, plus 160 years on Monday. Quintana was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, second-degree kidnapping, aggravated intimidation of a witness, retaliation against a witness, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with evidence, and other charges.
He wants to send a strong message to gang members.
This is the result. This is where you will end.
Rene Rosales, 36, was sentenced to 150 years in prison. Rosales was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with evidence, and being an accessory to a crime.
It took a jury 4 hours to convict these 3 men in connection with the murder of...
Abel Gallegos, 36, was sentenced last month to life in prison plus 163 years. Gallegos was convicted of multiple charges, including first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, second-degree kidnapping, retaliation against a witness, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with evidence.